This is a reading from Modern Saints by Anne Ball. 21. Saint Charbel. Saint Charbel Makhlouf. Abdullah Yusuf Makhlouf, born 1828, died 1898 in Lebanon at the age of 70. On December 5th, 1965, the Lebanese hermit Charbel Makhlouf was beatified in the presence of many of his fellow countrymen and numerous cardinals and prelates of the entire church who were present in Rome for the closing of Vatican Council II. Charbel was the first confessor of the East, elevated to this honor according to the formal procedure of the Catholic Church. He was canonized in 1977. Yusuf was born May 8, 1828, in a small Lebanese mountain village called Bekka Kafra. He was the fifth child of a modest farming family. His family was a close one. They were good Christians who left Yusuf with a solid faith. Yusuf attended the village school, which was attached to and supported by the parish church. In his village, he was noted for being pious, honest, simple, and sincere. Prayer was a large part of his life, and he had a special devotion to Our Lady. As a young man, he prayed to the Blessed Virgin to help him become a monk. Two of his maternal uncles were monks, and he wished to follow their example. When Yusuf spoke of his wish to become a monk, his family attempted to change the subject, or did not pay much attention. His family and a young lady of the area had marriage in mind for him, so without giving any advance notice, he left in 1851 for the monastery of Our Lady of Makhlouf of the Lebanese Maronite order. At age 23, he began his first year of novitiate, choosing the name of Charbel, an early martyr. For the second year, he was sent to the monastery of St. Maron at Anaya. Here he made his monastic profession and took the solemn vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience in 1853 at the age of 25. After his profession, Charbel was sent to the monastery of St. Cyprian at Kefifan. This monastery served as the scholasticate of the Lebanese order. Here, Charbel studied for the priesthood. A good student, he was consistently among the top students in his class. He was ordained to the priesthood on July 23, 1858, at the Maronite patriarchal residence, Bakirke. After this, he returned to the monastery of St. Maron, where he spent 16 years of his monastic life before withdrawing to a hermitage. When Charbel entered the monastery, he was already known as a mature young man, a man of prayer, and in his monastic life he continued to grow in virtue. All the testimony collected for his cause points especially to an almost legendary obedience. Pray without ceasing was his precept, and hour after hour he knelt in adoration before the Blessed Sacrament. In his monastic work, Charbel consistently chose those tasks that were the hardest or the lowliest. He respected all his brother monks, and to them he became a model of the monastic life. He often fasted and performed acts of mortification. His daily union with God was apparent to those who lived with him. Father Charbel felt called to the life of a hermit. According to the Eastern monastic tradition, monasticism reaches its fullness in the solitary life. Many times, Father Charbel asked to be allowed to retreat to the hermitage, which was connected to the monastery at Anaya. This hermitage had room for 3 monks, and 3 were already there. In spite of the fact that the hermitage was already fully occupied, the superiors acceded to Father Charbel's request in 1875. Permission was granted after a lamp in his cell remained lit for several hours, despite the fact that it contained no oil. Father Charbel spent the remaining 23 years of his life in the peace of the hermitage. His life there was most austere. He practiced severe mortifications, slept on the hard ground, and ate only 1 meager meal a day. He usually offered Mass about noon in the order to spend the entire morning in preparation and the rest of the day in thanksgiving. At 11 o'clock on the morning of December 16, 1898, Father Charbel was saying Mass in the chapel when he suffered a paralytic stroke just at the moment of the major elevation. After an agony of 8 days, he surrendered his soul to God on Christmas Eve at the age of 70. Even before his death, Father Charbel had been considered by many to be a saint. On the day of his burial, the superior of the monastery made the following unique notation in the monastery journal. On December 24, 1898, Father Charbel of Bekka Kafra, a hermit, struck with paralysis, died after receiving the sacraments. He was called to the bosom of God at the age of 70, because of that which he will do after his death. I need not give any details of his life. Faithful to his vows and of exemplary obedience, his conduct was more angelic than human. In spite of this unique testimony to the feeling of his brother monks that they had lived with a saint, it is very likely that Father Charbel would have simply rested quietly in his grave were it not for the fact that an extremely bright light shone around the grave for 45 nights after his burial. Because of the enthusiasm of those who witnessed this phenomenon, the superiors of the monastery requested permission to exhume the body. At his exhumation, 4 months after Father Charbel's death, his body was found to be perfectly incorrupt, in a lifelike, flexible state, although in accord with the tradition of the community, he had been buried with no coffin. In addition, the ground was wet from recent rains. After being cleaned and reclothed in a fresh garment, the body was placed in a wooden coffin in the private chapel of the monastery. Several other strange phenomena accompanied the preservation of the body in such a lifelike state. One that deserves mention is that the body continued to exude a liquid that was a combination of perspiration and blood. The postulator for Father Charbel's cause, Father Joseph Makhlouf, writes, "I have personally touched the body. In August 1952, it seemed that the body was both living and dead. It is not a rare phenomenon that a cadaver will remain preserved, but that the mortal remains continue to be flexible, soft, pliable, and that there is constant perspiration is extraordinary and unique. This is the case of our saint, whose body remained preserved and perspired until the day of his beatification. We can say that his body, which is now simply decomposed, was without alteration in 1965. After opening his tomb, one does not smell the odor of corpse. Rather, there is an aromatic odor. The body was resealed after the beatification, as it had been several times before. Father Makhlouf writes of the last exhumation, "His tomb was recently opened, 1976, and I was present. His body was completely decomposed, and all that remained was a skeleton." God apparently allowed the incorruptibility to last until the sanctity of his servant Charbel was recognized by the Church. In 1950, Charbel's monastery began keeping records of the miracles reported at his tomb. Within a 2-year period, over 1,200 reports had been collected. Many of the miracles reported at the tomb have involved miraculous recoveries from disease or deformity. One outstanding cure involved a seamstress who had had a hunchback and certain other deformities since childhood. She visited Charbel's tomb to pray for her relatives, not for herself. After the cure, her physician testified that he had examined her many times. Her figure became the normal figure of a woman who was not deformed by a hunchback. The cures accepted for Charbel's beatification and canonization include the cure of an extremely severe stomach ulcer, the restoration to sight of a man with a torn retina, and the cure of a throat cancer. Charbel was canonized on October 9, 1977. Pope Paul VI said of him, "He helps us to understand in a world very often fascinated with riches and comfort, the irreplaceable value of poverty, of penance, and of asceticism in freeing the soul in its ascent to God."